Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down all sorts of cool things in the fantasy world. We got some QB1s named, some star wide receivers still not practicing, and then myself and the man joining me in just a second. I'm going to break down some of the biggest fades that absolutely scare us ahead of 2024. So that man, of course, is the one, the only Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain, The Rock McFarland. Dwain, I think we're going on like 6 hours of recording together over the last 2 days, and I love it, brother. How you doing?
Yeah, man. What did we get last night? Well, we probably got 4 in last night, and then we had yesterday morning plus this. So when this show's done, we'll be at like 7-8 hours. So yeah, feeling great.
I'm a little more excited about spending time with Dwain than he is with me, but that's okay. I'll take it. We're all having a good time.
Not true. Just tired.
I'm just giving you a hard time. Make sure you guys get that coffee. It is, essential to good well-being for sure. But plenty to get to today, guys. But first, a quick word on Fantasy Life Plus. Fantasy Life Plus, our premium product over here at Fantasy Life. And really, guys, at the end of the day, we're just trying to make things as perfect and customizable as possible for you guys to go ahead and win whatever fantasy league you're in, because lo and behold, they're, existing in all different shapes and sizes out there. So again, with our rankings, which you can input your direct settings, your league sync, and the ability to use our draft champion tool and go in and get customizable mock drafts with keepers and pretty much anything else you can imagine. Again, whatever your league is, we are here for you with Fantasy Life Plus. So check it out. Tier 1 package is going to be under $40 a year, and even our Tier 2 package, less than a Chipotle burrito per month. Hard to beat that. So if you got your fantasy draft this weekend, check out Fantasy Life Plus. All right, Dwain mentioned some of the news, and yes, not exactly unexpected, but we did finally get some starting quarterbacks named, have Mike Tomlin and the Steelers officially give it to pole position leader Russell Wilson, and this morning we had Jared Mayo go ahead and name Jacoby Brissett as the Patriots QB1. So starting off with Russ in Pittsburgh, Dwain, over under, we'll say 3.5 games here, because as much as Russ is the QB1 for now, Ian Rappaport, even when he did actually report the news, did say that Fields helped close that gap during a strong training camp.
Yeah, I think I would take the over, and it's just based off of how they've been talking about Russ as the starter all along. Also based off of the fact that we know Mike Tomlin is pretty good, regardless of what the state of his team is, of just kind of grinding out at least, being around 500 or slightly above that. So I think it's going to take a little bit before they're going to realize that they probably need to make the switch. I do think that Fields would be the better player to start week 1. Now, the problem with Justin Fields is if you've got, and every coach is this way, right? They don't want the turnovers, Ian. They don't want the sacks. A sack is essentially almost a guaranteed punt. So it's just handing over a possession. And then the fumbles, we already know how big turnovers are. Your plus minus in the turnover margin is a major driver to winning football games in the NFL. So I think that the Steelers are going to try to grind it out as long as they can. Again, having said all that, I think the quarterback that would probably drive defensive coordinators more nuts would be having to be prepared for Justin Fields. Because if you look at the Steelers, we've got George Pickens, and we've got Jalen Warren. That's your 2 weapons. So really having the quarterback be able to integrate their legs into that and it be a component that the defense has to worry about, in my opinion, just gives you more versatility in your offense. And as much as we give Arthur Smith a hard time, and there's some silly things that he does with player utilization, some of his schematic stuff is actually pretty good. And I think that he could be a really good fit with Justin Fields. So I think I'm taking the over on it, but I think the big challenge is I'm still taking, if you're taking a last round swing on a quarterback for some reason in your fantasy draft, I'm still taking Fields, because if I'm wrong about the over under on Russ Wilson, it doesn't do me any good to take Russ Wilson. I'm never going to play him, but Fields, he is the one guy that could step into your lineup and score 20 fantasy points per game.
Once you start getting to the very end of drafts where even the handcuffs are gone, you're not liking any of the wide receivers. Yeah, Dwain's throwing a dart at a quarterback who has, more fantasy points per game than anyone other than Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow over the past 2 years. Yes, I'm talking about Justin Fields. Yeah, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. So Russ, not the league's worst quarterback, even the reduced version of himself, ranked 18th in EPA per dropback last season, 3rd in completion percentage over expected. But yes, still does seem like a a matter of when, not necessarily if, we're going to see some quarterback turnover going on in Pittsburgh. And then in New England, Dwain, it is Jacoby Brissett under center to start, despite Drake May, seemingly closing the gap, during a strong preseason. We literally had Mayo 2 days ago say that he thought that Drake May outplayed Jacoby Brissett out here. So the common sentiment seems to be, oh my gosh, how could you play the rookie behind this offensive line? And I get it. It's not the most pristine offensive environment. It's a bottom 5 offensive environment in football, but I'm pretty sure those concerns also existed in Houston last year, Dwain. As easy as it is in hindsight to say, oh no, that was so much better and everything. And they had Laramie Tunsil. Again, relatively, give me the Texans from 2023 over the Patriots in 2024. But what are we doing here, man? Because this seems like a situation where 3.5 weeks, I would be much more willing to take the under based on the fact that they're facing the Bengals, the Seahawks, the Jets, the Niners, Dolphins, and Texans to start the year in New England. Yeah,
they're going to be 1-5 at best after that stretch of games. Like, they're basically praying that they beat the Patriots. I mean, that they beat the Patriots. Yeah, they beat themselves, that they beat the Seahawks in week 2. It's going to be a really tough stretch. I'm with you, honestly. Like, they're going to be screaming for Jacoby Brissett to be benched by halftime of the first week. Like, that's what the Patriot fans are going to be doing. So I've already been on the record saying this, unless you really think you've got the intestinal fortitude as an ownership and leadership team to say, no, we're not starting Drake May all year. Why not just go ahead and play him now and give your fans something to root for, give your team a chance? We did see it in the preseason. I get it. It is a preseason game. Jacoby Brissett is a complete statue. And this offensive line looks really, really bad. Now, they never at any point in the preseason had all of their starters out there, so maybe it's going to be a little bit better than what we saw. But the concerns with the offensive line would want me to have a guy like Drake May under center that can at least, give you some escapability from the pocket, buy you a little bit of time. And he has that ability to, still hit those big throws down the field. When I look at Jacoby Brissett, like he's been a great backup quarterback for his career. He is a player that can step in if you're on a good team, and he can win you some games. He had a really good year with Cleveland just a couple of seasons ago. But given the state of this offense, it's Drake May. Now, having said all that, we're wanting fantasy points. Maybe they are willing to bench him all year. I don't know. Maybe they're looking at it thinking, guys, we're going to be 1-6 and he's going to, or 1-5 and he's going to get destroyed. And maybe they're worried about Drake May's confidence. That's the only thing I can think. But I'm with you. I definitely think that Drake May gives that team a better chance to win.
Jacoby, 3rd in completion percentage over expected and 8th in EPA per dropback over these past 2 seasons. He's made the most out of his opportunities, but I just think you take Drake May 3rd overall. Why not go ahead and find out what you have? Let him learn in the fire versus on the bench. But again, I am not an NFL coach or a doctor, so maybe New England does know what they're doing over there. We will certainly see what happens. So also, Dwain, some more news on some star wide receivers that people continue to be drafting pretty high in fantasy drafts. Jamar Chase not practicing despite returning on Tuesday, I believe it was. And then Brandon Ayuk, who was believed and expected to be out there per GM John Lynch, also still not practicing. So Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, Dwain, we're getting closer and closer to week 1. Where are we at, regarding the panic level?
The Ayuk one's pretty easy. You're just fading him and letting him slide. And then if you get a really good value on him, you can circle back to him. The problem is, he needs injuries on his own team to even really give you upside. He was overpriced as a second and third round pick in drafts anyway, right? So he should have always been more of a round 4, round 5 guy. Great talent, but in a super loaded room. When you look at Chase, it's tougher for me, Ian, because I really believe in my heart of hearts he should easily be going over Justin Jefferson this year. We know what Justin Jefferson's done, but Justin Jefferson's now playing with a quarterback, right, that's averaged 215 yards per game in games where he's played at least 90% of his snaps, and that's Sam Darnold. I get it. Kevin O'Connell can open up some more upside in that offense, but are we suddenly expecting Sam Darnold to be Joe Burrow? No way. We're not. Like, Joe Burrow can throw for 300 yards a game, and we get Jamar Chase as his number 1. Honestly, T. Higgins and Jordan Addison, they're closer to being the same than different. They're both like 19, 20% target share guys. So I really prefer Jamar Chase to Justin Jefferson, but with this slight little risk that is involved. Now, there's no way Jamar Chase is holding out the whole year. But even if he held out for 2 or 3 games, Ian, that would be enough to make me be like, just give me Justin Jefferson. I'm just going to go ahead and take him, not worry about it. So I think it can be used as a tiebreaker. I will say if Jamar Chase falls down your draft boards this weekend and you're getting down around pick 10, 11, 12, somebody falls in the early second round, like, I'm pouncing on that. I'm absolutely pouncing on that because if he is on the field week 1, like, you're getting a great reward. And even at that point, like, it's fine. You could manage a game or two. The problem for Jamar Chase is he has no leverage, man. He's got 2 years left on his contract. If he doesn't play this year, the Bengals own his contract. So, I mean, he could try to push it to the extent that he takes as many games off that allow him to still get his contract to toll forward. But again, that's also going to cost him game checks, man. And I know it sounds really good to be holding out to get your big deal, but as soon as that starts costing you, like, whatever it is, I don't even know what it would cost him. Probably $1 million a game. He was a high draft pick. Probably cost him $1 million a game already at this point in his career. That's really problematic to the bank account. I know I guarantee you a Miss Chase. If there is a Mrs. Chase, like, she's not down for that.
We had the 108 pick in a real-time draft last night. Great fantasy provider. You guys should definitely check them out. And yeah, Dwain ended up going with Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase. Now, last week we also got shared Chase, not completely shying away from him by any stretch of the imagination. But yes, tiebreaker certainly does make a bit of sense at this point. And trouble in paradise, a.k.a. San Francisco. No Ayuk and also no Trent Williams. And per NFL Network's Mike Garafolo, that deal is not close to getting done. So last time when we saw Trent Williams banged up and no Deebo Samuel, 49ers limped to 17 points in 3 straight games, 3 straight L's as well. So hopefully they can get those players back soon. Obviously defending, Super Bowl runner-ups could use those help in a hurry. Final note, Dwain, we finally got a Samaje Perine update. He has signed not with the Bengals, but the Kansas City Chiefs. And we also had old man Dalvin Cook go ahead and sign with the Cowboys practice squad. So with Dalvin on the practice squad, again, we'll kind of see what happens in Dallas. But the Perine news really fancy relevant because we were begging the man not to go ruin our Chase Brown bags. And for now, they are safe. What do you make of Perine, though, in Kansas City? Is this concerning for Isaiah Pacheco's pass down upside? And then also, do you think Perine maybe has some handcuff upside, or is this going to be more of a muddled, 2 or 3 back committee should anything happen to Isaiah Pacheco?
Feels like it'll probably be a committee, but Perine is the kind of back that in this offense like this could come in if he found himself getting 60% of the workload. You probably have a near running back 1 on your hands. Like you'd have a good running back 2. As far as the ceiling thing for Pacheco, I think Perine's going to immediately, once he gets down all the scheme and the protections and all that, I think he'll take all the long down and distance stuff away from Pacheco. Because that's mostly blitz pickup duties, so you could just keep those hits off of Pacheco. It's typically 3rd and long. It's man coverage. It's, like I said, it's a blitz, so you're not getting many points out of those snaps anyway for a running back in fantasy. So I think that's fine. The concern, Ian, would be if Samaje Perine took over the 2-minute offense, and that could happen. I mean, he's a good passing down back. If he takes away the 2-minute offense from Isaiah Pacheco, that would really be problematic as far as the ceiling case for Pacheco, because last year, once Pacheco was in that situation where we had Jerick McKinnon miss some time, CEH miss some time, and then they just kind of committed to Pacheco anyway in the playoffs. Dude, he was great. He was averaging over 17 fantasy points per game. I mean, he was a running back 1. But if you take away that 2-minute offense role in a team that's a pass-first offense that will come out and run the hurry up, those are really valuable snaps that he would be losing to Perine. So that's what we're going to have to keep an eye on week 1. My guess is week 1, Pacheco's still the full-time back. My worry would be as the season goes, they try to find a way to let Perine take some of that workload away from Pacheco. And then if suddenly Pacheco's back to being a 2-down thumper in a pass-first offense, we've actually already seen that movie for Pacheco, and it's like a low-end running back too. So I think there's definitely risk. I wouldn't take Isaiah Pacheco in round 2 of fantasy drafts right now just because there's enough other good players, Ian, and it's enough of a risk. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to happen, but there's too many other good players. The opportunity cost is too high at this point for me on Pacheco.
Those targets would have been a lot sweeter being funneled to Pacheco, certainly. Now, not exactly expecting Perine to go out there and all of a sudden, be this 1B compliment. Last year, if we are kind of imagining Perine in that Jerick McKinnon sort of role, McKinnon only had, more than 5 touches in 0 games when Isaiah Pacheco was also out there, only had more than 3 targets one time. So Pacheco still caught 44 passes, not completely nosediving him down the ranks, but I'm with you, Dwain. Round 2, a little bit of a steep price for the man right now. All right, guys, before we get into some players that absolutely terrify us to be fading, a quick rapid recap on what, again, was a pretty eventful Wednesday in the NFL news world. First of all, Brock Bowers still not practicing with that foot injury. Antonio Pierce did say it's minor and the team is protecting him, but something to keep in mind for, the stud first-round pick. Steelers wide receiver Roman Wilson back in individual drills, obviously been dealing with this ankle injury throughout training camp, so good news for the Steelers' second-round pick. Colts running back Trey Sermon, right now seemingly the handcuff to Jonathan Taylor, also back at practice while dealing with the hamstring injury. Now, had a lot of guys being released on cut day, but a lot of them were again re-signed to practice squads here on Wednesday. Specifically, Commanders signed ex-Texans and Cowboys wide receiver Noah Brown. The Lions re-signed Donovan Peoples-Jones and also added Allen Robinson and, of course, Tim Patrick to their practice squad. Chiefs re-signed Justin Ross, also added Bailey Zappi. Colts re-signed Evan Hull, not great for Trey Sermon. Speaking of, 49ers signed former Panthers wide receiver Terrence Marshall. Cardinals re-signed Desmond Ridder, fresh off that hilarious DoorDash commercial. Saints claimed ex-Vikings kick returner and running back Kene Nwanu, so a bit of running back depth to that shallow room. Chargers claimed Hassan Haskins off of waivers, obviously very familiar with Jim Harbaugh. I think he might have had a good game against Ohio State once upon a time, but I have blocked that out of my memory. Been a long few years. Also re-signed running back Isaiah Spiller to the practice squad. More importantly than any of that, though, Dwain, is the Giants' unretired number 1 for Malik Neighbors. So if you guys had any doubt about the number 6 overall pick, the man is now wearing number 1. Has not been in commission for over 90 years with the Giants. I should say nearly 90 years. Shout out to the family of Giants legend Ray Flaherty for actually giving Neighbors that opportunity. Also, Chargers traded for Taylor Heineke. My official analysis is that he is better than Easton Stick. Thank you for tuning in. And finally, the Browns converted $44 million of Deshaun Watson's salary into a signing bonus. Cleveland now has $62 million in cap space, the most in the NFL. Brian Wentworth meme. What does that mean, Dwain? Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, the possibilities are endless. We got a lot going on in Cleveland. So that's the news, everyone. And now it's time to pay a little bit of homage. Love, love, love our friends over at Homage. And Dwain, I know you are rocking one of their ever so comfortable shirts today. If you want to stand up, do a little, dance and show off for everyone, look at that. Barry Sanders, many people's idea of the GOAT, and maybe ours too. But anyway, calling all fantasy football fanatics, the season is finally here. Draft rankings are being overanalyzed. Keeper decisions are being made and sleepers are being shortlisted. But how about your fantasy football fit? Homage's super soft, ultra comfortable NFL player apparel is a first-round pick that is sure to make your fellow managers jealous and allow you to glow in style all season long. From past stat-stuffing legends to the current crop of fantasy studs helping you secure this year's championship, they've got everything you need to gear up for the new season. Check out homage.com, that's HOMAGE.com/fantasy to reveal their top-ranked officially licensed player tees so you can rep your fantasy team with pride. Be sure to use promo code LIFE for the exclusive discount for Fantasy Life listeners. Again, homage.com/fantasy, promo code LIFE. Pay homage. All right, Dwayne, this is a fun exercise that we like to do a couple times throughout the summer. And what better way to kind of wrap up August than to go through players that we've generally been fading that terrify us, because as much as I would love for 2024 to be the first year that we get 100% of our player takes right, yeah, we've had some misses over the years. So, Dwayne, I know we're both going to be in 20 to 30, probably managed leagues, and then we've both done literally hundreds at this point of best ball drafts. So we have players that we have not been drafting, and accordingly, we are a bit scared when we do look back on that reality. So why don't you go ahead and kick things off with a certain wide receiver who may or may not have been, the number 1 player at the position in the 2021 and 2022 seasons.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp's a guy that I just don't have a lot of, especially because he just keeps moving up in fantasy drafts. And when you look at a lot of the red flags that are there, I have concerns. He's going into his age 31 season. And so looking at wide receivers that have at least three wide receiver 1 finishes on their resume that are heading into that age group, going back and looking at it historically, they've averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game in. That's not a wide receiver 1. 46% of them, though, did finish as a wide receiver 1, and then you had 46% of them drop to wide receiver 4 or below. So you're a near coin flip at this age, even if you've been an elite wide receiver, because you've got 3 wide receiver 1 finishes already on your resume. Half the time we didn't get any notice. They were just gone. They just dropped completely off the map into being something that you couldn't use. The other thing, as I studied the data on aging wide receivers, was really this trend that I saw around man coverage becoming more and more important. And so whenever we look at Cooper Kupp over the last 2 seasons, the big issue is his yards per route run against man has actually really plummeted. He went from 4.22 in that year you were talking about to 2.07 to 1.32 against man coverage last season. So really bad. 13.5 fantasy points per game last season. So he's already given us a year where it's like, whoa, he was definitely not worth what we drafted him at. Now, last year at this time, he was hurt heading into the season. So that's the caveat. He was hurt. He ended up missing those first 4 games. Then he just really battled injuries all year long. So on one hand, that's another red flag for a major potential for a cliff on a guy like Cooper Kupp. Now, having said all that, that's a lot of data points against Cooper Kupp. But again, the context of the injuries over the last 2 years, if he stays healthy, are his yards per route run really that bad? Probably not. Like, he has a quarterback that still loves him and Matthew Stafford. You've got a great schemer in Sean McVay that's going to move you all over the line of scrimmage. They're going to keep you in motion at the snap. You're going to get reps from the slot. You're going to get these mismatched scenarios. And the other thing is, even though we had the emergence of Puka Nacua, who had an elite wide receiver season for a rookie, one of the best that we've ever seen, Cooper Kupp, despite all these issues that we talked about, still had a 27% target share when the two guys were on the field together. So Stafford was still feeding him the ball. And so the last part of this is just Cooper Kupp when you hear him talking and where he came from. I mean, the dude came to college as a walk-on. Like, what did he weigh? He weighed nothing. He weighed, like, I don't know, it's something ridiculous, like 150 pounds or something. Yeah, he weighed 0 pounds when he showed up. There was just a shirt there. There was no Cooper Kupp, just like his clothes laying there. And he just worked his way into this position, and you just see the work ethic that he has. You know how much he studies the game. You know that he is simpatico with Matthew Stafford, and those are the things that scare me to where I know I could be wrong. We also have this Puka Nacua kind of lingering injury news. He's been spotted at practice, so some people are saying we're good for week 1. I know you had a little bit of information that you found out there that was like, guys, we might have to break tap. There's some potential, maybe bigger concerns around Puka Nacua. So all that to say, man, it is a little bit scary. I know he's an older player, but at the same time, I could really be looking up Ian and being like, wow, Cooper Kupp is averaging 22 fantasy points per game, and I don't have enough of him on any of my fantasy rosters.
Information is not, secretive just to me, but it was actually a clip that Josh Norris posted on his Twitter, conversation between the great Evan Silva and the fellow great, Greg Rosenthal. And it was just Greg, very plugged in, NFL, media member, and basically talking about just what he's kind of heard out of Rams camp. And with the injury, he's not loving the price tag on Puka Nacua. So again, matches some of the sentiment I believe Jeremy Fowler echoed back in August, where it's one of those things where when Cooper Kupp is healthy and right, a lot of people still believe he is the number 1 in Los Angeles. But Dwain, even then, certainly not a situation where we expect Kupp to relegate, Puka to this deep backup role by any stretch of the imagination. In 12 full games together last year, Puka Nacua, 100 targets, and Cooper Kupp, 99. So 1A, 1B in an offense that we're expecting plenty of. And again, it's more so that second or maybe even early 3rd round price tag where the problem lies. Over at ESPN, he's going pick 46, which I don't think either of us would disagree with, Dwain. But when it is between Cooper Kupp and younger guys with similar target ceilings, like Jalen Waddle, like Chris Olave, like Deebo Samuel, like, Nico Collins. Hey, Malik Neighbors, we're drafting those guys over Cooper 9 times out of 10. And of course, the guy we can't stop coming away from drafts with, Rashee Rice. So I'm with you on Cooper Kupp. How high do you think the ceiling is, though, Dwain? Like, again, we're scared. We're terrified. That's the title of this show, after all, of fading him. Do you really think we can get another overall wide receiver 1 finish here? Because that's why I am more so okay with my, soft fade on Cooper Kupp, because of Puka's presence there. Could he turn in a wide receiver 1 level season? Yes, but I don't think we're looking at another, 2021 repeat out of Cooper.
Yeah, it's the Puka Nacua little bit of unknown injury news. If he suddenly is battling an injury all year long or re-aggravates something early in the year, and then Cooper Kupp is suddenly healthy, because of all the schematic things Sean McVay does for him, I do think he could uncork a 20-plus fantasy point per game ceiling. Like, it's in the range of outcomes. Lightning in a bottle kind of season could still be there for Cooper Kupp. Having said that, like, all the factors that we've named are still there, and there's a reason that we have this fade, and opportunity cost is a really good one that you just brought up, some of the other guys in that range. So if we know that Puka Nacua is healthy week 1 or like 90% and he doesn't re-aggravate anything, I feel way more comfortable with this fade. Just because, again, I think it's a consolidated offense. We just talked about it. I mean, they had 27 and 26% target shares in the games together. So, I mean, like, they're both getting fed plenty. So you could have 2 wide receiver 1s and how consolidated the attack is. But can you really have that high end wide receiver one finish where, you have more of like that 31% target share? Probably not if Puka Nacua is healthy, but still, man, it's just knowing what Cooper Kupp has gone through and how committed he is to his craft. That's the thing that scares me so much, because I'm like, if there's a dude that can come out here and offset everything that I just said, it's Cooper Kupp. It is so Cooper Kupp.
So we will see if Kupp can make Dwain and I look a little bit stupid for fading him as much as we had. Only one way to find out with some sweet, sweet football live on our televisions starting next week. Cannot wait for that. All right, Dwain, this one feels sacrilegious, but I've been fading Lamar Jackson a good amount this offseason. Yes, the reigning MVP, the man responsible for the most fantasy points per game in a single season ever at the position back in 2019. Have not been drafting a ton of them. So there have been times where I'm at the 4-5 turn. I'm able to get Lamar and Mark Andrews double tap. Really, really fun time doing that, obviously. And I'm not at 0% or anything like that with Lamar. But I think the big thing it comes down to, Dwain, is Lamar has been priced as the QB3 for a lot of the offseason. And I preferred Patrick Mahomes, someone who is still number one all time in fantasy points per game. And when you even get, guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts going the same route as Lamar, I'm taking them every single time, because as great as a dual threat that Lamar is, there are signs that things aren't going quite as well. Now, looking at his career rushing yards per game, 80 back in 2019, 67, 64, 64 the following 3 years. Last year, just 51. And we're not seeing him make up for it with touchdowns on the ground. Just 9 combined over the last 3 seasons because, remember all those Gus Edwards goal line stats? The Ravens aren't treating Lamar Jackson like Jalen Hurts. They're not treating him like Josh Allen. Trevor Lawrence, Dwain, actually has more carries inside the 5-yard line than Lamar Jackson over these past 2 seasons. So we're not getting the goal line touchdowns. The rushing yards are going down, as they do with any quarterback pretty much who is getting older. And guess what? The Todd Monken passing experience didn't exactly bring out this completely, new lethal passing attack. Yes, Lamar was very efficient, 8 yards per attempt, career high completion rate. It was a net positive for the offense. The man just won the freaking MVP for crying out loud. But all that said, last year, he was a QB3 in fantasy points per game, which is about where he's being priced. And the 3 years before that, QB8, QB9, QB6. So when I look at Lamar, Dwain, again, I think he's elite. I hate how people just still try to say the man can't pass the football, because we never look at these other quarterbacks and say, well, they can't run the football as good as Lamar, and he's always got that trump card. So please, guys, I am not trying to slander Lamar Jackson, but as terms of fantasy assets, I look at him and I just say, are we looking at a far more expensive version of Anthony Richardson, of Kyler Murray, of Jaden Daniels? And that's how I've been drafting him accordingly.
And really, the only way that he burns you is if he suddenly uncorks that 28 point per game upside that you saw in 2019. Which could happen.
It's scary,
and it could
man.
happen. It could. I mean, the guy's had 21.2, 20.4, and 21.8 fantasy points per game over the last 3 years. I mean, he's a model of consistency, but you do have to deal with him missing some games pretty much every year. That's going to happen. You got to worry about him running off the field to go, you got to go use the bathroom, Ian. But you mentioned the other big nitpick, right? And it's just the fact that he doesn't get those carries inside the 5-yard line. He only had 12% of those. When you look at guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, they're up in the 30% range of those design rush attempts for their teams. And you're adding Derrick Henry. So I don't think he's going to be going up in that category. So that means he's going to be, you're hoping for 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns is probably, I don't want to say it's the ceiling. He's Lamar Jackson. It could go higher, but that's like the reasonable range. But on the positive side, last year, man, their game scripts were so in control. So you could argue a lot of the Todd Monken stuff was just because they didn't have to. They didn't have to put the accelerator to the floor. They didn't have to peg, the speedometer. But when you look at Zay Flowers going into year 2, he did a lot of things we liked in year 1. He played without Mark Andrews for much of the second half of last season. We didn't get him back until just a little sprinkling of him in that final playoff game against the Chiefs. So if you have both, you've got Zay Flowers growing, you get Mark Andrews actually healthy, and then you get in more competitive game scripts, I do think we might see a little bit more out of that Todd Monken offense. And that's how this would end up being problematic. But I am with you. It scares me. I'm with you. I've also faded Lamar Jackson, but it's not been a fade on Lamar Jackson. It's been more of I like some of the other positions going in that range, and then I really feel good about waiting. I mean, good God, people are letting Anthony Richardson fall like a rock at this point. I don't care if Anthony Richardson throws for 3,000 yards this year, guys. He's still going to be a top 12 quarterback as long as he's healthy. And I mean, are we so sure he's going to throw for 3,000 yards? He did have one good drive in that preseason game, and then he had, a pick 6. So it's going to happen. But the other part is, we talk so much about Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is potentially Lamar Jackson that you're getting in round 10 of your fantasy draft. So that's honestly been the bigger thing. And I am with you. If I am going to take one of those elites early, I want one of the two guys that can potentially run in the, get 12 to 15 rushing touchdowns, or I want the guy that could throw 50 passing touchdowns. That just leaves Lamar Jackson out.
Final point, and I brought this up a little bit in kind of the Derrick Henry discourse as well, but we're making a really big assumption that the Ravens will continue to have this big, badass elite offensive line when, guys, they are replacing 3 starters. I mean, PFF's 25th ranked group entering the season wasn't exactly, world-beating last year, and I understand it worked out just fine for the offense. But, yeah, and then with the skill position guys, I like Zay Flowers, I like Mark Andrews, I like Isaiah Likely, but, once we start looking at, I don't love Nelson Aguilar, or Rashad Bateman being our number 2 wide receiver, Dwain. Is that a fair take, over here? So not exactly cooking with the same level of gas that we see someone like Patrick Mahomes, who, again, has legit 5,000 passing yard, 50 touchdown upside. I have been making more of the bet on the Chiefs offense than the Ravens. We will see how it works out and what comes to fruition by the end of this year. So Cooper Kupp, Lamar Jackson, players that we're fading, but again, we see the path to upside, and accordingly, it does terrify us. So 2 more players on the way for you guys, but first, a quick word with our friends over at Experian. Guys, Experian is to your finances what FantasyLife is to your fantasy league. It is a tool and resource designed to make your life easier. The Experian app is free and serves as a one-stop shop for managing your financial health, which is freaking important. Financial health, mental health, personal health. Make sure you're qualifying all of it. And with so many spending and subscription details to track, let Experian handle it for you. They'll find and cancel your unwanted or unused subscriptions, helping you save money and focus on what really matters, winning your fantasy league. Download the Experian app today. Dwain, a running back, 2 running backs now that we are a little bit worried about. Yours resides out of Buffalo, and yes, he is the clear-cut RB1, but let's face it, RB1s in Buffalo haven't exactly been the world's most fantasy-friendly entity over the years. So talk about James Cook and why you're a little bit scared about the lack of bags you have so far in this offseason.
Yeah, James Cook, this is one of the players that I'm the closest thing to being a stan on. James Cook, I've been in on James Cook since he entered the league because he has this great receiving profile. I get it, guys. He's had some really horrific drops. Here's the thing. James Cook is one of only 6 running backs in the league that can even get open on those passes where he's getting targeted, and they could be potential long touchdowns. He has a very unique skill set, and we've also got a situation where Stephon Diggs is now gone. We don't know for sure what Curtis Samuel's going to be able to do. He might just still be an 18% target share guy. Keon Coleman, their first-round rookie draft pick, don't know for sure what he's going to be. Mac Hollins, I know what he is. I know what Marquise Valdez-Scantling is. I feel pretty good about Dalton Kincaid, but there's a chance there's not an alpha target earner there. And over these last 2 years, Ian, with plays without Stephon Diggs on the field, we've had a 31% targets per route run. Small sample alert here, guys. Small sample alert. But James Cook, 31% targets per route run on those plays without Stephon Diggs. So there's a chance he's the number 2 option in the passing game. That could happen. So that's a lot of upside. He also already notched, 13.9 fantasy points per game. That's a running back 2 finish last year, despite being really held down in the utilization department, being right around 50% of the snaps, 50% of the rushing attempts. Even a slight upgrade in that, Ian. If it got to 60% and his route participation got to 60%, he's probably going to be a guy that I look back and wish that I'd gotten more of. Here's the challenge. He goes in round 4. And in round 4, Jalen Waddle falls into that range in your fantasy drafts and you're in a PPR. I've got my eyes on Malik Neighbors. I've got my eye on, all of these different wide receivers that I love. Heck, it could be Rashee Rice. And so it's his price. It's where he goes that I'm man, he's going to have to really overdo what I have him projected for to actually be able to do anything close to these guys. I already feel really good about their projection, and they have upside from where I have them projected on top of that. Yeah. Where it goes wrong for me, though, is if suddenly we get out in week 1 and James Cook gets 65, 70% of the work, because the rest of the backfield, it's Ty Johnson and we have Ray Davis, who we like. And Ray Davis, I think, could be a really good complement to James Cook. But this could just be the year, Ian, where they finally give him the workload. We've seen this happen with smaller backs in the past. Austin Eckler, everybody said, passing down back, until he wasn't just a passing down back anymore. We've seen that with several guys. Alvin Kamara, people used to say that. Now, Kamara's bigger than James Cook. But we've heard this sort of, narrative around these smaller guys for many years. And then, then you get the one season where suddenly they give him everything and everybody changes their mind. No, man, he's an every down back. He'll play all the time. So if that happens, it's going to be problematic. So I want to draft a little bit more James Cook in these final drafts, that I have over the next few days. The challenge is I just don't know, man, that I'm going to be able to pull the trigger because of the other wide receivers in that range that I'm going to have to pass that I have so much more certainty about. And again, they also have upside.
We like Ray Davis, the profile. He's a bigger back. He's got some receiving upside. Very good handcuff. We've been drafting plenty of him. But if you just told us at the beginning of the offseason, hey, the Bills are not going to re-sign Latavius Murray, and the only running back addition they're going to make is a 4th-round pick, we're feeling pretty good about that, Dwain, because, again, Latavius Murray last year, as much as Josh Allen does take a lot of the goal line rush attempts, Latavius still had 11 carries inside the 5-yard line, which was easily more than Cook's 4. So, God forbid, they do start using him inside the 5-yard line, something I believe Joe Brady even basically said they're not afraid to necessarily do out there. And, again, we shouldn't necessarily expect a 4th-round rookie to go out there and steal all those opportunities. So, we did see the final 9 games last year, Dwain. Joe Brady took over in the combined carries and targets for James Cook, 21, 23, 15, 28, 20, 19, 17, 22, and 23. So, again, we had the drop touchdowns. We had the 4 fumbles, which got him in Sean McDermott's doghouse. But it is a situation where, again, the man is not Christian McCaffrey. The man's not, prime Saquon Barkley. But you mentioned that receiving upside, Dwain, and they at least do use him in similar manners. Last year, it was only CMC, Saquon, and James Cook with an average target depth of at least 2 yards among all running backs. So, in terms of the explosive ability and just the pass down ability, there's only so many running backs out there, Dwayne, that can get 200 plus carries and, potentially 80 plus targets. And James Cook is one of them.
Yeah, man, when I look at the splits last year, the other thing that kind of still just made me feel okay about it is Joe Brady just shelled up the whole offense. Like they basically just shut all the systems down, turned off the lights, running on low power mode, batteries almost empty on the computer. I got 3%, guys. That was the Joe Brady offense. So I really don't like it. I don't like the offense is the problem. They just went to all this run game stuff. And the main thing they did is they also increased what they were doing with Josh Allen and gave him more of the rushing workload. And the problem I worry about is if the biggest thing that sticks out of that is just letting Josh Allen tush push and do the same things you get from Jalen Hurts. And why wouldn't you with Josh Allen? I don't think most people can stop him. Once you get inside the 5, it's just a major cap on the touchdown upside, even if he picks up some of those carries that Latavius Murray leaves behind. But overall, I looked at the Joe Brady experience on offense, and the percentages for James Cook didn't change. The only reason that his carries and everything went up was because Brady honestly ran this big turd of an offense out there, and it worked. The Bills just scraped by, but they had also some great game script. You remember that game against Dallas? They just destroyed the Cowboys. Didn't really have to do anything. So some of that stuff was really induced by some crazy, crazy leads that they had. So I don't know. I'm acknowledging this could really go wrong with James Cook, but I still struggle to find a way to think I'm going to click on his name even this weekend, knowing that I'm probably going to try to get like 15 more drafts in. I'm going to try to get a little bit, but I'm just going to live with it if I miss.
Another running back who, again, we are quite afraid of fading because he is our RB6 overall. After all, Eagles' new RB1, Saquon Barkley. And Dwayne, it's pretty simple. Again, we have our rationale here. Yes, we understand Saquon got paid. He's in an offense that has opened up some big time, gaps over the years. Very good offensive line. We know what Jalen Hurts does in the read option game, but there's 2 issues that we see in Philly, that we've seen in Baltimore, that we even saw in Chicago. As much as those could be, lesser extent the Bears, sorry guys, but you're moving up. As much as those are, very good scoring offenses, they aren't the most fantasy friendly for their running back specifically. And again, it's so clear that has been the case in Philly. When you look at Jalen Hurts, he is scrambling more than he's checking down. And accordingly, over the past 3 years, the Eagles have the 8th fewest targets to their running backs. Additionally, once they get to the goal line, what are they doing? They are pushing Hurts' tush. And Eagles running backs 30th in carries from the 1-yard line over these past 3 seasons as well. So now on the other side of things, Saquon is the running back, y'all. So guess what? He might get 300 freaking touches. And as much as the Eagles don't get fed the ball at the 1-yard line, it is still a run-first offense. And Eagles running backs actually rank first in carries between the 2 and the 5-yard line. So Saquon, as much as the numbers were not great last year, also did sprain his ankle in week 2. So if he was coming back in a less than ideal offensive environment, makes sense that those numbers wouldn't have been great. So Saquon Barkley, Dwayne, getting up there in age a little bit, but man, We like the offense. He's going to still have a lot of touches, even if they're not quite the specific ones we want. There is a scenario where fading Barkley kind of bites us in the ass.
Yeah, for sure. And he's another one of these guys where it's more hate the ADP, not the player. And he projects really well. Every site's going to have Saquon Barkley projected for a large workload. And that's something that you can easily get behind when you have an offense like the Eagles that we expect to be really good. But you already mentioned the limitations. You're going to have Jalen Hurts getting these carries inside the 5-yard line. If you look at Hurts, he led all quarterbacks with 45 and 47% of the Eagles' attempts inside the 5 over the last 2 seasons with Nick Sirianni there. Barkley doesn't face a lot of competition, in this backfield. We've got Kenneth Gainwell. We've got Will Shipley, who's a late-round NFL draft pick. But Hurts is not as likely to check it down. It's not as huge of a deal as people make it out to be, but Hurts will scramble some. And you already mentioned it. Like the passes, the targets are just not going to be there like they were for the Giants. When he was on the Giants, lesser offense. But if you're in a PPR, he's getting all those swing passes because they literally had no one open. Jalen Hurts is going to have someone open every play. He has A.J. Brown. He's got Devonta Smith. He's got Dallas Goedert. They're going to be doing a lot of things. They're adding wrinkles to their offense to try to get these guys more schemed up. So I think you're going to see a career low in targets and receptions for Barkley. I think you're going to see the potential issues inside the 5. But I will say, if he just manages to punch some of those in, Ian, you've got the great stat on it. Like last year, DeAndre Swift actually probably had a lot more carries inside the 5 than people realize. He just wasn't punching them in. And as soon as you don't get it on that first play, and that was actually Jason Kelsey's advice to Barkley. Hey, man, they're going to give you the first one, but you better get it in because if not, Jalen's taking it from you. Jalen Hurts is going in the end zone. So there are runouts here, though, where, again, it's really bad. If Barkley hits on the big play, this offensive line, what, 1,000,000% better than what he was behind? Is that an overstatement? I don't want to be like too hyperbolic here, but the Giants' offensive line was absolute dust. Yeah, the math adds up. So I'm with you. Again, though, it's hate the ADP, not the player. Where Saquon Barkley goes, if I'm in a full PPR and I can have a young elite wide receiver like, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, who's on his team, sometimes Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, it's tough. It's tough to click on Barkley. So I'm just going to have to live with it. But I totally acknowledge there's a run out here where and it would be one of the easiest ones ever. Like, guys, how do we talk ourselves out of Saquon Barkley just being on the Eagles? How did we do that? And it's going to look like we did mental somersaults looking back at it. But there's just a lot of stuff here.
Similar sentiment, obviously, with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson and that impact going on in Indy as well. So we'll see what happens. Again, just kind of preferring those wide receivers here. He's ranked as our RB6, so we're not completely out on the man. But when you are in those early spots in the draft, kind of got to not reach. But, if you are just a little bit down, it does result in very low exposure, which we have at this point to Saquon. So 2 more guys that we are, again, quite scared to be fading. But first, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. Hey everyone, with the football season kicking off, it is the perfect time to dive into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $250 back in bonus bets and 1 month of NFL Plus premium on us. That is something we can all celebrate. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And stay in on the action. Use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, new customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. All right, Dwain, a couple wide receivers to round things out. You are a little bit worried about one DK Metcalf, who, yes, in 2020, wide receiver 10 in PPR points per game. That was a very fun time, but wide receiver 22, wide receiver 25, wide receiver 22 in the 3 years since. Got quite a bit of target competition there, and someone that you'll probably need to be taking in round 3, round 4 in more drafts than not in order to acquire his services.
Yeah, I mean, you just nailed it. Essentially, he's shown us over the course of his career, he's probably a wide receiver 2. Okay, so that's that's the thing that's going on that's like held him down for me, where I'm like just not worried about kind of missing out on it. But then I also look at it and I'm like, okay, we get a new offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb. You know, they're gonna do some things in their run scheme as well to try to open up, honestly, the kind of things that DK Metcalf is good at, trying to get more vertical down the field. And then you've got Tyler Lockett, who honestly has been in dramatic decline for the last 2 years. A lot of things we talked about with Cooper Kupp, you know, he's been really bad against man coverage, not very good working from the outside. So that's an issue. And then we've got Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we like, and we definitely think there's a case for upside. But at the same time, JSN did nothing as a rookie. And JSN, like, is he really a separator? So there is this scenario here where you look up and you're like, wow, is this the year where DK Metcalf is just the true overall wide receiver one, undisputed on the Seahawks? And Geno Smith, I know he took a step back last year, Ian, but I mean, he was still an accurate passer. We've seen him this preseason out there, like the pass to JSN, the little fade from the slot, like that was an absolute seed from Geno. So he really appears dialed in. So you just add it all up. There's a chance if JSN's not as good as we think and Lockett is cooked, they could just force feed everything through DK Metcalf. And we know he's a player that, if you get him the ball, like, he's going to give you one or two really huge plays for touchdowns, and then you just stack on what he could do in the red zone. It could be problematic not having him on more of my fantasy squads.
Obviously had that 3-touchdown masterclass against the Cowboys. Single week ceiling is as high as anyone out there, and only turning 27 in December. So fresh off averaging a career high 16.9 yards per reception. But again, got to make some tough choices in that wide receiver 2 tier. And so far this offseason, Dwain hasn't exactly been going out of his way for DK Metcalf. I have another wide receiver, Dwain, in that kind of similar tier that just haven't been making a habit of clicking, and it is new Texans wide receiver Stefon Diggs. So he is 30, and yes, if you look at these last 4 seasons, even just removing the fact that over the last 10 games he got outproduced by Khalil Shakur, still had 107 catches, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. As you brought up in your, again, fantastic Age Cliff article, Dwain, 28% target share even after Joe Brady started running the hell out of the football last year. That is objectively a very good number. But man, looking at him, especially on ESPN, wide receiver 17 ahead of Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Devonta Smith, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Waddle. I mean, I think it's a coin flip between Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs out here at this point. So, Dwain, what is it about, again, a 30-year-old veteran who we have seen signs of decline from that we can get so excited about? Because the way I see it, man, I want Nico, I want Tank. I just think take the younger options who are also really good at football. But then again, it is freaking Stefon Diggs catching passes from CJ Stroud. That's the part that scares me.
Yeah, and the positives are he was still really good against man coverage. So some of the things that we look for and that are the kind of the pre-indicators to a decline, Stefon Diggs didn't show any of those. The only thing that really happened is, again, the Joe Brady offense happened. Like, I mean, Stefon Diggs, go look at the first half of last year. There's not many other wide receivers you would have wanted on your fantasy team than him. And so now we pair him up with CJ Stroud. He's another guy that I was taking Diggs quite a bit early in fantasy drafts. Then I kind of got away from him. I'm with you. I started taking more Tank Dell. This one, honestly, of all the guys we've talked about today, I think this one scares me the most because he hasn't shown the signs of decline. He looks like the starting wide receiver for more of the snaps than what we're going to get out of Tank Dell in Houston. With CJ Stroud, man, and Bobby Slowick, we love this offense. It won't surprise us. I know we talked about Mahomes throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, kind of joking around. Like, it's possible, people. And it's not like totally unrealistic. Like, the next name I would put on the list to have a chance of doing that would be CJ Stroud.
So when you say he hasn't shown signs of decline, are you purely just looking at the target share number? Because that was great, but let's face it, he was also sharing an offense with Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakur out here, okay? It wasn't like he had Nico Collins and Tank Dell vying for services. I mean, the yards per route run, 2 of the last 3 years, Dwain, haven't been great. He just averaged 7.4 yards per target, second worst mark of his career. 11.1 yards per catch, the third lowest mark of his career. And, you know, I'm not trying to take away the entire first half of the season, but there were some plays like that touchdown against the Dolphins where, you know, just kind of these weak arm tackles where it's like, okay, what is going on there? Everyone gets some fluky touchdowns from time to time, but I don't know, man. I did not watch Stefon Diggs last season and say, man, that's a player that is just repeatedly not getting helped out. On the other side of things, you know, had a nice double move against Jalen Ramsey later in the year. Josh Allen airmailed it, but we have seen signs of decline in terms of his per route efficiency on a yardage basis, but the man could still demand targets in a familiar offense.
Yeah, the last time we got worried about his yards per route run, he turned around and had a 2.65 the next year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I when I watched him, and then his numbers against the man coverage stuff were still good. So my guess is that, yeah, is he what he was 4 years ago? No. But is he good enough to still put up a high-end wide receiver 1 season with CJ Stroud? Yeah, I bet that he is.
Stephon Diggs or Deebo Samuel?
Stephon Diggs.
Really?
I'm trying to mess with you. I have Debo ahead of him. Like, Debo just gets the rushing attempts and stuff. So you're going with Debo, and you get the chance that Ayuk leaves. So name another name.
DJ Moore.
Same tier. Either one of those guys could do it. They're in the same situation. They're crowded wide receiver rooms. But we know more about CJ Stroud than we do about Caleb Williams. I think DJ Moore's a slightly better player at this point, but it's really close because DJ Moore never got to the heights that Stephon Diggs was at, right? So Stephon Diggs takes a step down from where he's been in a career. It could just be to DJ Moore's level. You know what I mean? So I think that's the same tier.
What about his own freaking teammate, Tank Dell? Because last year, Tank Dell and Nico Collins, exact same. I think it was 52 targets in 7 full games together. And something we brought up while drafting last night. We'll see what happens. But when you look at some of the cuts Houston made, getting rid of Teagan and Quarantino, their blocking tight end, they got rid of both their familiar fullbacks. They used 11 personnel at the 5th highest rate in the preseason. Ian, it's just the preseason. I know. But what are we talking about difference in routes per game between Diggs and Dell? 4, 5 potentially? Why can't Tank Dell?
I think it's going to be. Yeah, I think it's going to be more than that. Like, because Dell, he could be at 70% route participation, and you could have Diggs at 88. Like, it's going to be quite a bit. But like, I like both players. I've been mixing it up. Honestly, I don't think we can sit here and say for sure which wide receiver period on the Texans is going to score the most fantasy points. Our favorite is Nico Collins. I honestly think that Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell are in the same bucket together, and I think it could be just each week, right? It could be Stephon Diggs and Nico scores a wide receiver 1. The next week, Tank Dell's a wide receiver 1, and Nico's a wide receiver 2, and Diggs is a wide receiver 3. I honestly think we just shouldn't overthink it too much. If you have a preference, go with it. I've been mixing those two guys up the more that the drafts have gone on. Again, I started off heavy on Diggs, then I got really heavy on Dell. Now I'm kind of mixing those two players.
I mean, Diggs has had 8+ touchdowns, 1,500, 1,200, 1,400, 1,100 yards last 4 years. So it has been pretty good. And accordingly, that's why I come to you hat in hand saying, yeah, I'm a little bit afraid of having faded Stephon Diggs to this point. So we will see what happens with everything, Dwain. But overall, yeah, fantasy football in the air. So even if we are fading some scary players, still a great day to draft some great teams. So appreciate you guys tuning in the Fantasy Life Show. As always, we'll be back tomorrow with some more goodness to get you ready for draft weekend. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.